Hey you guys, how's it going? I am Gary, or the Shooter here, and welcome back to another video, and I decided to do a follow-up of my top 5 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Rivals video by finally moving on to the big guys, our 5 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. Or should I say, 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. Generally, when people make these kinds of lists, they usually include Yugi, Muto, and Yami Yugi as one separate entity. But however, since they're actually 2 separate characters, I decided to just make this a top 6 list and give them all their own separate positions on this list. So, without further delay, let's jump right into this list. My top 5, well, top 6 I should say, favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists, starting off with number 6. Starting off our list would be the original protagonist, Yugi Muto himself.
You suck!
That's right, people. Bring the flames. But before you start throwing them at me, just hear me out for a quick second. I know Yugi is the king of games and all that good stuff, but he isn't technically the only one to hold that title. The Japanese translation for king of games is king of duelist or duel king. So with that said, Yusei and Yuya have also held that title, so Yugi isn't the only protagonist to be named king of games. But anyway, Yugi's in last place because he didn't really do much of anything in Duel Monsters. Yami Yugi was one who did all the dueling, took part in all the action, and had 98% of the epic moments that fall under the name of Yugi, rather than Muto Yugi. He was just a vessel, didn't really begin to do a whole lot until the very end of the series. The main focus of Duel Monsters was Yami Yugi learning kindness, humility, and to regain his memories from his past. The humility and kindness especially comes into play if you've seen Season 0 where he was just straight up killing people and mind raping them. Yugi Muto himself did have some growth in learning courage and getting the strength he didn't know he had from Yami Yugi, but until the end, he didn't really show any of that. He didn't really do much of anything at all. The most he ever did before that was just save Joey from Mare's control during the Battle City arc. So with that said, not really doing much in the overall story, Yugi just gets last place. Number 5, the Zexal protagonist, Yuma Tsukumo. Tsukumo Yuma-kun, the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, and much like his show, he isn't that popular amongst the fan base. But I still found myself respecting Yuma as a character. Yuma, while in no way is a terrible duelist, he is someone I will say is the least skilled of all 6 main protagonists. However, at the same time, that was one of the things I found to be one of Yuma's best attributes. Before Yuma, we had Yugi, Jaden, and Yusei, who were all introduced as dueling prodigies who were whooping ass left and right. But Yuma was different, as he began as a legitimately terrible duelist who made basic mistakes, pulled a lot of amateur's moves, and was all talk and couldn't really do much without actual helping him, and lost more duels than all of his predecessors combined, losing 10 on-screen duels in Zexal, opposed to Muto Yugi, who only lost 2, Yami Yugi with 4, Judai with 3, and Yusei who's technically undefeated. Although, to be fair, most of Yuma's losses came from off-screen duels, or duels where we never actually saw the whole thing, we just saw him losing, so I don't count those against them. But as time went on, we saw Yuma's dueling skills improve to where in Zexal 2 he won most of his duels without Astral's help, then at the end of Zexal he defeated Astral himself in a duel. Which is something I found to make Yuma more relatable to the audience. All of us who dueled before or now began as an amateur and tried to imitate what we saw in the anime, and actually play the game how it's meant to be played. While Yuma's we can relate to, we saw him be bad, but improved and became great as time went on. Yuma, despite being one of my least favorite, in my opinion is the most fun of all the protagonists, being rather entertaining with his naivety, childish attitude, and in general just being a complete idiot. But I do like how he can be mature when the situation calls for it. Really, there isn't much I can say about Yuma. For kids and beginning fans and duelists, Yuma's fairly relatable, but for older fans and veteran players like me, not so much. But I still do like him. Number 4. The OG protagonist, Yami Yugi himself.
You suck!
Yeah, that's right. Yugi Muto himself is 6, while Yami Yugi is number 4. Because, come on now, let's be honest, he was the real protagonist of Duel Monsters. He did all the dueling, had all the action, had all the cool moments. He was more of a goal for Yugi to achieve and surpass than anything else, in addition to being the protagonist of Duel Monsters. Yami Yugi for me feels like Kaido when I made my rivals list. While he may be cool, I feel like he didn't really grow as much as the others, or at least have anything that made him stand out from his successors, barring Yuma. If I include Yami Yugi's shenanigans from Season 0, then he would definitely be a lot higher on this list. But since Season 0 isn't a part of the mainstream Yu-Gi-Oh anime, he can't use any of that to his favor. Yugi's story of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh trapped in a cursed artifact and wanting to recover his memories was an interesting one. But Yugi never really wowed me with his character moments outside of his dueling. In the beginning of the series, when he duels Kaiba at Duelist Kingdom, when Kaiba threatens to commit suicide should he lose, Yugi doesn't even hesitate to attack, knowing full well what would happen if he does attack. He doesn't even seem the least bit guilty for almost killing Kaiba. We got a little bit of a shining character moment in the Yu Chronicles arc, where his guilt for essentially getting Yugi killed after he fell into the dark influence of the Yu Chronicles was eating away at him, but he overcame that darkness and was able to persevere afterwards. But aside from that, he didn't really have anything worthy of being a truly shining character moment or part of character growth, for me at least. I actually feel like Muto beats Yugi in terms of character development, but his lack of screen time is really what put him where he was on this list. Yeah, I know how cool Yugi is, and I know he is the OG protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! That a lot of us grew up with, myself included, but like I said in my Pokegirl video, nostalgia can only take you so far. It is a powerful drug, but not a drug I overdose on. Nostalgia can only get you so far, but if that's the best thing you have going for you, it won't take you that far at all. And with Yugi, nostalgia won't take him to number 1 spot on this list. So, moving on. Number 3, our current protagonist, Yuya Sakaki from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Our current leading role, Yuya from Arc 5, was going to claim the number 2 position on my list initially, but with the way Arc 5 was going, I decided to just pull him down to number 3, but that could change, as Arc 5 still has a minimum of 6 months before it ends. Yuya, for me, feels the most human out of all of the protagonists we've gotten so far in Yu-Gi-Oh! Being introduced as a kid who's depressed and tries to escape the harsh reality of the world by smiling, essentially sporting the sad clown gimmick, and wants to share his philosophy of using dueling as a means of making people smile and bringing happiness to others. However, during his tenure as our main protagonist, we not only see his philosophy be challenged at every turn by the likes of Jack, the Synchro Dimension, Academia, or Reggie to an extent, and he'll have to abandon that philosophy to pull out a win, and we see him struggle with his own issues like keeping his philosophy when it's challenged, fighting his own inner darkness while trying to end a war between 4 dimensions, or just in general trying to become a great entertainment duelist like his father before him. Throughout each part of the story of Arc 5, we see Yuya learning a valuable lesson from various other characters to help himself grow and be a better entertainment duelist. In the first season, we see Yuya emulate his father, but learn he has to be serious and not make careless mistakes while entertaining the crowd. In the Synchro Dimension, he learns that it is nice to emulate his father's style of dueling, but he also learns not to copy it to a T and makes his father's style of dueling with his own way of dueling, including pendulum summoning, a method he personally created to form his own truly unique style of entertainment dueling. Then he puts it to the test in the XC dimension to bring out in hope and smiles to the people who destroyed it and those who are still alive surviving its destruction, uniting both the Synchro Dimension and the XC dimension, so far at least. And what happens now in the Fusion Dimension, only time will tell, since we still have maybe 20 to 30 episodes of Arc 5 left before it ends. In spring next year. Yuya was a bit hard for me to talk about, since even though we still are in the final stretch of Arc 5, we still have plenty of time left before it ends. Yugi still has plenty of time left to grow as a character, and while he's not my favorite Yugi protagonist, I will say he is the most balanced of all the protagonists we've gotten so far. Number 2. Jaden Yuki of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. The second protagonist to grace the screen of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yuki Jirai-kun. Now, being completely honest, I'm not the biggest fan of GX. Truth be told, it's one of my least favorite of all 5 Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. But Jirai is a main character that really grew on me. Jirai had the same issues that GX had, and that he took far too long to get into gear. The first 2 seasons of GX, Jirai's only characteristic trait was being a Genki guy who was always happy and hardly showed any other emotions barring just that. However, when the 3rd season came along and Yubel came to the picture, he began to get more serious and grow as a character, spending half of the 3rd season depressed after causing the death of all his friends for his own selfish obsession of finding Johan, which caused him to fall into despair and fall into possession of his previous life, the Supreme King. And after being saved from the Supreme King's influence, we see Jirai even more depressed after realizing he caused even more trouble. And it took seeing Kaiser fighting Yubel himself and dying for him to regain his resolve and get over his depression. After that, in the final season of GX, we see him take up a more cynical and serious personality after the events of the third season, and becoming a bit of an asshole, ignoring his friends, pushing them away, and snubbing them in almost every turn. Even though I do know full well that Junai meant well, and he was pulling the classic, "it's not you, it's my enemies" thing, but still, it just made me like him less for some reason. Heck, he interrogates Alexa's brother so hard like he's Batman, it causes her to literally slap him across the face because of it. But with all the events of GX, we see Junai lose his love and passion for dueling, since something he loved to do became a chore he had to do to literally fight for his life. But in the last dozen episodes of GX, he begins to regain his love for dueling, which fully returns in the final episode of GX when he meets and duels Yugi himself. Junai's story is one that I'm sure all of us can relate to. The story of a kid maturing, learning to grow up in a harsh, cruel world, but even despite how terrible the world is, you can always still have fun, even if you're a grown-up. A very invaluable lesson that Junai taught me. One of the good things that came out of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Out of all the protagonists, I feel like Junai would probably be the most easy to get along with, being the most down-to-earth and probably the most relatable too, at least from a life experience standpoint. Card games on motorcycles. My favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist, number 1, Yusei Fudo from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Out of all the protagonists, Junai has a story that in its simplest form is easiest for me to relate to. But of all the protagonists personality-wise, Yusei has the general attitude and personality that I actually relate to the most. Generally, I'm more serious, wanting to get straight to the point. Heck, more often than not, I'm often told I have a perpetual scowl on my face even when I'm not upset, kind of like Yusei himself always has. Yusei, in my opinion, is the most selfless and heroic of each of the protagonists we've always gotten so far. Always willing to help out another human being, even if it means dropping whatever he's doing or giving up something if it means he can help another person. Heck, in the final season of 5Ds, he's willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to save Neo Domino City, and in the last few episodes, he's literally seconds away from committing suicide to save Neo Domino City. With his father causing the Zeroverse incident that separated Neo Domino City and Satellite, Yusei feels some guilt for his father's actions and wants to do whatever he can to repent and atone for it. People often claim that Yusei is a quote-unquote Gary Stu, which I don't really see how, especially when considering that all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists would qualify since they all have the same do-no-wrong hero mentality. One thing about Yusei that really irked some people were his constant speeches about friendship and bonds, which I never really minded, especially considering the life that Yusei had, and the context of 5Ds. Yusei grew up an orphan in the slums of Satellite, where all he had were his cards, Jack, Crow, and Martha, and without them, he would have been alone in his life. And the show of 5Ds in general is a story about 6 people who were in one way or another orphans at one point or another in their life, or alone, but came together and formed a bond that went thicker than blood, were connected for life by a greater power, and became the family they never had. I think Yusei had every right to talk about bonds and friendship, since really, that's all he's ever had and the thing that kept him going. And it really showed just how far he's willing to go for his friends and made it that much easier to root for him. Another thing that bothers people would be his duel record, since out of all 6 protagonists, Yusei is the only one who technically has a flawless dueling record. Out of all 40 on-screen duels he's had, he's never lost a single duel throughout the entirety of 5Ds. Before anyone says anything, they're going to bring up the duels with Jack and Kiryu. For starters, the duel with Jack was a pretty serious flashback, so if it was a flashback, it doesn't count since it didn't happen on screen. And with Kiryu, he technically didn't lose their duel since that was a no contest. The attack didn't connect, his life point didn't hit 0, so he technically didn't lose that duel. The ending was hokey anyway, so I don't count that duel. Yusei was a truly selfless and heroic character, which made it that much easier to root for him. He never fell into darkness or temptation, and could always bring an evil character to their senses. And on top of that, Yusei's just a straight-up badass in every sense of the word. Earthbound immortals, the Nordic gods, Zushin, who's as powerful as the Egyptian gods, Time Lords, who are certainly more powerful than the Egyptian gods. That's no problem for Yusei, he took all of them and still won. But in the end, being all seriousness, Yusei is hands down my favorite protagonist of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Long live Satellite's shooting star, Yusei Fudo. And there you have it, you guys. Those are my top 6 favorite Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists from my least favorite down to my favorite. I don't dislike any of these characters. I do like all of them, just some more than others, obviously. But anyway, let me know down there in the comment section below who's your favorite protagonist. Who's your least favorite? Why don't you like them? Why do you like them? All that good stuff. I am Gary, or the Shaver 31 Clearing Synchro Dragon. Stay gold, everyone.